hello, my international people. Thank you very much for being with us. Louise Uachu, broadcasting live from Vancouver, Canada. This is May 16th, 2013. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. But this is our last episode of the season. We're going to stay in touch the whole summer through videos. We have videos coming. We're taking the show on television, video, web television, live streaming, and all that stuff so you can participate even more. Thank you, everyone who follows every week and all our guests who have been on the show before. We can't wait to have you, interview you on camera in our studio in Vancouver. So if you're in town or if you're coming to Vancouver, send us your information at info@uachu.com, info@uachu.com, and we will definitely be happy to schedule you. It's going to be exciting because it's been exciting on the radio. It's going to be better on television. You can now see us. It's been requested, so it's going to be granted. So anyways, today we're going to talk about a very, very interesting, touchy subject, which is the subject of the prison, the states of the prisons, especially in America. What's happening? What's all this mass incarceration? Like, what's up with that? So we have a very interesting guest about that, and we'll bring her into the show right now so you can hear from herself. Good evening, Miss Tamara Hill.
Hi, good evening, Louise.
Thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me on the show. It is a pleasure.
I think it's going to be a really nice way to close the show because you're an interesting person.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm humbled by that. Thank you.
All right. So you're a therapist.
Yes.
How did you become a therapist, and why a therapist? Did you grow up with too many crazy people and you thought, they really need someone like you?
Well, I don't want to say that on the air, Louise, but no, actually, I, had a lot of personal experience with friends, and I, looked around me and I thought, wait a minute, I want to do something to make a difference in life. I want to live my life with purpose, and I want to be defined by how I live my life for other people. And so that's what pushed me into becoming a therapist. I find the human mind quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how does one know if someone is sane or insane?
Wow, that's a tough question. And yeah, I mean it's a really tough question because mental health is defined in so many ways, Louise. But I think one of the hallmarks of someone that has a problem, a mental illness, a behavioral problem, is looking at behavior. How does it adjust to the rules of society? Is that behavior of the individual able to adjust, or is it not able to adjust? And I think that's how we can define a problem.
Mhm. But so who in society defines what behavior is criminal and what behavior is morally right? Like, where do you draw the line? Is that something that therapists do?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer that question, but what I do know is that here in the United States, Louise, we have two systems, and they both define what is criminal behavior and what is a mental health problem. We have the mental health system and the criminal justice system, and both systems were designed to to define what a mental health problem is and what criminal behavior is. Unfortunately, the U.S. system is doing a very, very bad job at defining what a mental health problem is versus just criminal behavior.
Mhm. Because like some of those cases where people, they are accused of a crime, but then they get off because they say they were crazy during the time that they committed the crime. So how do you make a difference between real crime and crazy crime? And is crazy crime forgivable? Why is crazy crime forgivable?
Yeah, I think I'm understanding what you're saying, and it's a little bit difficult. We have here in the United States, Louise, what we call the insanity defense. And I'm not going to go into, the specifics of it, but the insanity defense basically says I have a mental problem and I did not know what I was doing based on that mental problem, and as a result, I should be treated for a mental health problem as opposed to incarcerated. Unfortunately, here in the U.S. system, Louise, we have a very unforgiving system. And for men of color, it gets even more unforgiving. But there are various reasons why African American men and other men of color engage in criminal behavior. And it's not always just the fact that they're criminals, but rather they're dealing with mental health problems, behavioral health problems, drug problems, negative environmental influences, abuse, neglect, and trauma.
Great. I'm happy that you got to that topic because that's definitely where we're heading. Now, you have worked during your years as a therapist, you have worked with people who are under the prison system?
Mm-hmm. Yes, mainly juvenile delinquents, as we call them here. Yeah.
So who is a juvenile, and how do you become a juvenile delinquent? What do you have to be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot of opposition to authority, obviously, and there's conduct problems, robbery, theft, disobeying police and law enforcement, maybe fighting a teacher, maybe fighting a parent, maybe stealing from a store, doing any of those conduct-related things can land you in the juvenile justice system. Unfortunately, we have a society here in the United States, at least 300,000 individuals who are sent to or sent into the prison system with a psychiatric disorder. And unfortunately, they go there, Louise, they don't get treated, and it's basically what I like to call an enduring cycle of downward mobility. The individual goes into the system, they don't get treated, they come out, commit another crime, and they end up going right back into the system.
Mm-hmm. Now, what is this disproportionate incarceration in America of black men? What is it about black men that makes them the most incarcerated people in America?
Oh, absolutely. Well, again, as a therapist, I say mental health problems and behavioral health problems. I want to start there. With a lack of access to treatment and a widespread lack of knowledge as well as stigma in the black community, we have so many black males and men of color who are not getting treated. When a mental health problem is not treated, Louise, it ends up leading to incarceration. Most black males or men of color, when they have an untreated mental health problem, they end up self-medicating by using drugs. And unfortunately, the ultimate end is incarceration there as well. Stigma keeps many families of color from reaching out, even admitting that their loved one has a problem. And that's bad because ultimately incarceration is the end point for that individual, especially if their problem is not taken care of. But I would also say, in addition to that, that we have negative environmental influences that seem to be the highest among black males in the U.S. And when I speak of negative environments, I'm speaking of mental scarring. And I like to refer to that as identity issues. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing in my world. So I'm just going to attach myself to bad people because I need an identity. The other thing is cultural exclusion. We have a lot of black males in this country that feel excluded from, if we're very honest about it, white America. They feel very, very excluded. We also have poverty. When a black male feels pressure to provide for himself and his family, he ends up selling drugs, abusing drugs, using drugs, and it ends him in the jail cell.
Mhm. So, do you think this is why does the society choose to deal with this problem by incarceration?
Yeah. Well, I really like to refer to the criminal justice system here in the U.S. as a holding place. It's a modern day psychiatric and drug institution. It's a place where everybody goes that we don't get. It's like saying we don't understand who you are, we don't know what you need, and we don't understand why you can't adjust in society. So we're just going to put you in a prison system. At least 2.4 million individuals are in the prison system as a result of drug abuse. And like I said, 300,000 are in there, 16% because of mental health problems. Society here in the U.S. does not understand these individuals. The easiest place to put them without doing a lot of brain work is the criminal justice system. It's easier.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a very sad reality, Louise, but that's the thinking in the U.S.
Mhm. So would this be due to the fact that once these human beings are incarcerated, they work for free, almost?
Could you repeat that one more time? I'm not sure I understood that question, Louise.
Like there's numbers there that show that inmates provide actually a lot of labor force for a lot of companies that use inmates as labor force.
That's an interesting take on that. I have not looked into any research regarding that. I'm not sure quite what to say about that, but I mean that's an interesting concept. I'd love to do more research in that area.
So what do these men do once they go to jail? What is then done to correct the situation? Are they being educated into what they did wrong and how they should avoid it next time? What happens once they go to jail, from your perspective as someone who has seen them in jail?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, nothing happens. And that's the biggest problem here in the U.S. It's the biggest problem that we have. When an individual goes into the criminal justice or the juvenile justice system, nothing happens at all. The criminal justice system here in the U.S. was designed to do two things. One is to enact stricter standards for society to follow, and two was to rehabilitate. Unfortunately, the system is not rehabilitating. It's a holding cell. It's a place to put individuals that we don't understand. It's a place to keep society protected from the quote-unquote criminal. Unfortunately, when someone's incarcerated, they are not assessed for mental health treatment needs. They are not rehabilitated appropriately. They are not given opportunities to do better. When they are released from incarceration, this is where a lot of confusion occurs among families. They don't know what their loved one's deficits are. Did they learn anything there? Did they get treatment? This is a really big problem. When they go into the criminal justice system, there's nothing there to really rehabilitate them or even treat them.
Wow. That's a very crazy situation that we need to rectify. So if you were the goddess on this planet and you had a solution, what would that solution be? It's needed. What would you do? Who would you kill? Tell me. Make a list.
Well, that's why there's only one God in this universe. I don't have a clue as to what I would do, but I think, there are a couple things that we can do. One thing that I would say is to provide opportunities after incarceration. I think that's utopia. Have churches, have advocates, civil rights leaders, meet black men and men of color and say, here's a job, here's a volunteer experience, work under me, I will be your mentor, I will help you. I think the next thing that I would want is just to ensure that every individual who's incarcerated receives an assessment. Criminal behavior doesn't necessarily mean the individual is a criminal. Unfortunately, we have mental and behavioral health problems that leads individuals to do criminal things. It doesn't mean that they are inherently criminal. So I would definitely, recommend ensuring mental health assessments upon incarceration. And I think just providing education to families. Families are often left behind when a loved one goes into the criminal justice system. They are hurting as much as the individual who is incarcerated. So they need a lot of education, a lot of support, and a lot of services. Mm-hmm. I wish I were a goddess, Louise.
So in the meantime, before you become a goddess, what are you doing? What is your job in this situation? Like, what do you do for people, and what do people come to you for?
Absolutely. Well, I have a website. I have a couple websites, and I usually communicate with a lot of people. I get thousands of emails daily. One of the things that I have kind of structured my career around is just advocating for needy people. That's families, parents, caregivers, individuals who are kind of like the quote-unquote have-nots in society. These are people that have potential. Other people don't think they do, but I think they do. So I've kind of designed my career around speaking for these people, being a mouthpiece for them. And people connect with me through Twitter, through Pinterest, my own websites. And so, yeah, I would encourage, you to try to contact me there. I'm often looking for ways to be a spokesperson for needy people.
Mhm. So that's very, very, very honorable, and I encourage you to continue. Now, how does one become crazy or mentally ill? Is there something that needs to happen for someone to become ill, and then how long would it take before you diagnose the person, and what kind of damage can happen in the meantime?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of families, parents, caregivers, they don't realize that the more you ignore a mental health problem, the worse it gets. It never gets better. And that's one of the reasons why therapists such as myself, we advocate getting treatment as soon as a problem is recognized. And even if it's not psychiatric treatment, if it's just, getting an individual a positive role model, if it's removing them from a negative environment, whatever it is, you want to start early. But I think, it's proper and in place to define what mental illness is. It's a biological disease. It's a biological condition. It's something that we are born with. It has a lot to do with genetics. Life stressors can also lead to mental illnesses such as depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder. When you have individuals who are experiencing, let's say, for example, major depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, the last thing that you want to do is ignore it, because this is when the problem sets in. Here in the United States, we have a high proportion of individuals who have mental illnesses who are incarcerated. They are homeless, victimized, and violent sometimes. And this is because they are not being appropriately treated. We have a nation that doesn't want to look at the fact that mental illness exists. So people cover it, they ignore it, and they focus on the positives. That's bad, because not paying attention to the problem often leads to negative consequences, such as incarceration.
Mhm. Now, what are the things that can a normal person spot it? Like, are there giveaways to spot that someone has a problem?
That's a very, very difficult question. And even for myself as a developing person in this field, I have to often go to other people for information on how to spot a mental health problem. It's very difficult, and I think it takes a trained eye. But I think there are some signs that you can look for. You can look for bizarre behavior, an individual stating that they are seeing and hearing things that may not be true or may not be there. There's various ways to spot a mental health problem. I'm not sure that I could just look at you and say, okay, this person has a problem. You really have to get to know the individual so that you can tell the difference between what's normal and what's not normal behavior. One of the biggest problems that we have here in this country is a lot of families don't know when their loved one has a problem. It's very, very difficult. And so as a result, families don't get treatment for their loved one because they can't tell when the loved one is actually suffering. So that's a very difficult question. I think I would just recommend to families listening, parents, individuals, look for bizarre behaviors. If you have an individual constantly getting into criminal behaviors, constantly getting into crime, or law enforcement is constantly stepping in, that may be a sign that your loved one is suffering from something much, much deeper than just problematic behavior.
Mhm. What about when you say that people who can't keep jobs, or is there a drug that makes things worse? Is if you have a mental problem and then you drink or you smoke or you do this and that, is that going to make it worse? like what really what brings it out, because it seems to be like people are normal and then they go nuts all of a sudden, you know, like, and then you're like, what happened?
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, I'm a big pro advocate of no drugs. A lot of my clients, especially my young clients, they say, oh, my God, there's Miss Tamara, she hates drugs. I say no drugs because drugs destroys the mind. And if you have an individual that has a mental health problem, a behavioral problem, drugs do increase. They do increase the possibility that a person is going to do something that they wouldn't do otherwise. You know, as I stated earlier, about 2.4 million individuals are incarcerated today because of drug abuse. According to the Business Insider, since the war on drugs began here in the U.S., we've been fighting the war on drugs for years, and individuals are just being incarcerated due to drug abuse. But I think it's important to mention also why individuals are using drugs, and I think there are three big reasons. One is usually self-medication. They're self-medicating a psychiatric problem or an emotional need. Sometimes it's a cry for help. That's number two. And number three, sometimes the drug use is needed to medicate a mental health problem that is not being medicated appropriately. So I would say street drugs, illegal drugs, anything like that is definitely going to make a mental health problem worse. You don't want to self-medicate. You want to actually seek treatment under a therapist or your medical doctor.
Mhm. But don't the medical doctor prescribe you drugs anyways?
Yes, they do. But they're actually designed, these medications are designed to affect the mental health problem directly. Unfortunately, street drugs do not do that, and there's various reasons why, which I think is a whole other show. But yes, you are being prescribed drugs, but they are medications that have been researched and designed to meet the needs of what your loved one is suffering from. So if you're suffering from depression, an antidepressant is so much better than marijuana. Marijuana will end up making you 10 times more depressed and maybe irritable than an antidepressant. So it's just understanding how drugs affect the mind. I would encourage you and anybody listening to go to www.drugs.com to find out more about how drugs affect the brain.
Mhm. So what kind of drugs do you believe in?
Well, you know, I'm not a big medication person. I'm not really big on prescribing medication without evaluating the person from a holistic perspective. So that's focusing on diet and focusing on sleep patterns, focusing on exercise, things like that. But I do believe that drugs such as antipsychotic medications, antidepressants, both of those drugs, if it's going to keep your loved one out of the criminal justice system because of a mental health problem, I think medication is appropriate. What you want to do is evaluate, does my loved one need a psychiatric medication to keep them out of trouble? And if it's a yes, then I encourage medication.
Mhm. Wow, all this is just so overwhelming because there are so many things that I didn't know. So now can we answer like the main question that we were answering in the beginning? Does incarceration become a death sentence for these black men who are underprivileged when it comes to this particular issue?
Oh, definitely, definitely. And, you know, when you posed this question to me, I just thought, you know, this is a quote-unquote death sentence. When an individual is serving time, it is absolute lockdown. Every component of their life is disrupted. Their relationships, their access to employment, their self-esteem, their pride. You know, research shows that former inmates have a much more difficult time than others getting employment and restarting their lives. It's like starting from scratch. It's basically teaching a baby to walk again. And, you know, African-American males already battle both racial and social stigmas in this nation and all over the world. And even those that have education and job opportunities, being incarcerated, Louise, reduces any amount of social power that a man of power could have otherwise. it is a death sentence, metaphorically speaking, because the individual of color is up against so much socially, racially, culturally, and to be incarcerated it's like signing your name away. You're basically saying, I'm not capable of doing what I should be doing. Unfortunately, our unforgiving society holds that against these men of color, and it is a death sentence ultimately.
Wow. America, eh? Land of the free, eh?
Well, we have a lot of work that needs to be done.
Land of the free is pretty interesting. Now, what about there's this, I don't know if this is related to the topic or not, but this idea of also that once you're incarcerated, you cannot vote. You lose your political participation in society. Like, what would be the link between you being capable of thinking politically and choosing your political leaders with you being incarcerated for whatever reason? Like, why do they do that?
Oh, my. I mean, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things that I've been thinking about. And, I just want to say really quickly before I answer that question directly is you bring up a fantastic question, because this goes to what my field regards to as a self-fulfilling prophecy. We have African-American men and men of color in this nation that lose their ability to vote. About 5.3 million Americans, mainly men of color, who are disproportionately impacted by the criminal justice system, they are not allowed to vote. This basically says to the psyche, you are not worthy. You are not worthy to participate in the things that make you a citizen. And as a result, that individual probably will fail again. The self-fulfilling prophecy basically says, you think negatively of me, and so therefore I'm going to internalize, whether I realize it or not, how you see me, and so therefore I'm going to fail ultimately, just because I can sense you think I'm a failure. And we have a country that doesn't realize that the self-fulfilling prophecy is so powerful. It has a way of speaking to that black male psyche, that man of color psyche. It says you are a failure, you're not worthy, and so therefore you can't vote. You can't do the very thing that makes you an American.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is crazy. So what was the point of having a black president? 2 terms. Did having a black president change anything in terms of this particular situation?
I'm not sure, and unfortunately, I'm not able to comment on that fully, but no, I don't know if it has had a direct impact on the system, which I'm pretty sad that it hasn't. It should have, but unfortunately it has not.
Do any of the inmates ever talk to you about their political views and how they feel about their political rights being taken away just because they went to jail or they had a problem?
Well, at the moment, I'm not working in the prison system. I've kind of redirected my field to kind of focus on families and parents. But when I did work with juvenile delinquents, so to speak, they would never speak to me about the politics of this, and neither would the adult inmates. And I think it was just because they didn't understand that their rights were being taken from them. They didn't understand that if you commit a felony here in the U.S., you will not be able to vote. So a lot of them were just, uninformed that their rights were taken. It's kind of like a shocker when they come out of jail, when they're released. Oh, I can't vote. I don't have access to employment. I haven't been treated for my problem. I haven't been rehabilitated. It's ultimately a death sentence. The person comes out very, very confused. They've lost rights. They're not being treated. There's no opportunities. It's just an enduring cycle of downward mobility.
Wow. As an African person, I would like America to return our people as of now.
Wow. Very interesting statement.
This is crazy because this sounds like worse than the time of enslavement, because if people are being taken away and being employed for free, and then their rights are being taken away, like what kind of freedom is that? How does this fall into being a freedom society?
Sure, and that's one of the most difficult questions I've been posed with. I don't know. I mean, and even when we're not talking about men of color, just talking about Americans in general, it is enslaving that we can't figure out how to treat mental health problems. We can't figure out how to meet the needs of those in society that have really, really huge needs. It's enslaving because we can't figure out how to help individuals that have mental health problems. It's devastating. We're trying to understand it. We're trying to open up new research avenues. Those therapists, such as myself, are trying to find ways to educate people to their rights, their options. But it's metaphorically speaking, it is a death sentence, and it is very enslaving.
Okay, but so is it because they can't figure out a solution, or because they don't want to figure out a solution? Because there's a lot of intelligent people and a lot of options and better solutions. What is it that makes it that those better solutions and those other options are not put into practice, and this system is what prevails?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, Louise. I lost track of your question. I apologize. I was trying to get it. I think all of this is overwhelming for me too somewhere.
Yeah, because you're saying that you can't figure out a system, a solution to this. But I'm asking, do you think it's because you can't figure out? You have a lot of intelligent people, or the lack of will? Is there a lack of will? Do people really want to solve the problem?
I think that we really do want to solve the problem. It's hard to figure out which way to go with this, and this is the reason why I think ultimately, like I said, the mental health system and the criminal justice system were designed to do two separate things. Criminal justice system was designed to rehabilitate. The mental health system was designed to treat mental illness. What we're finding out in our society as of maybe just a few years back, maybe 5 years back, we're very new in this, we're babies in this, that the criminal justice system and mental health system are actually more of a partner than we thought. And so now we're starting to see that individuals with mental and behavioral health problems have engaged in criminal behaviors. They should not be in the criminal justice system. They should be getting psychiatric help. We're finding out that the system is way more complicated than we thought. There's so much gray. There's no black and white answer. I think there are lots of people who want to see change. We just don't know which way to go. It's just so much, and like you said earlier, Louise, it's overwhelming, and really we're taking baby steps with each other, and we're trying to figure out the best way to get to the finish line.
Wow, but thank you so much for being one of the people who is at least trying to do something about it. So you have decided now to work with families and children?
Yes.
So what brought you to concentrating in that area? Like, why did you choose to work with the area that you're working with families and children?
Sure, absolutely. Well, kids are my passion. I've always loved to work with kids. I ended up working with adults within a community mental health system where there were a lot of incarcerations, a lot of various mental health problems such as schizophrenia, substance abuse issues. And I found that a lot of parents and families didn't understand that their child had mental and behavioral health problems. A lot of our youth today are ending up incarcerated. They're ending up with their futures snatched out from under them. A lot of the time, their families either don't want to get mental health treatment because of stigma. They don't want to label their child mentally ill. And a lot of times, kids are just simply overlooked. I realized that this was a big deficit, and, I'm a follower of God. I'm a follower of his leading, and I felt that he was leading me to work with kids.
That's really great, because that means that you are actually preventing the problem from an early age. Does it make a difference when you solve when you work with problems with children, or do they grow up to have those problems anyways, if it's a genetic thing?
Absolutely. It's both. And what happens is, in cases where it's genetic, an individual, a child, a baby can be born into this world seeming to be absolutely healthy until they get to the age of 5. 5 years old is usually when mental health and behavioral health problems emerge. You're never going to see anything early in life. It's usually between the ages of 5 and 12 that you begin to see problems. In other cases, it's 14 and age 18. In even more cases, it's usually age 40 and up. So it just depends on when that mental or behavioral health problem decides to emerge. It's very, very unpredictable. But I would say anybody over the age of 5 can end up, exhibiting signs of a mental and behavioral health problem.
I think maybe at 5 years old is when you realize you're on planet Earth and you're like, what? I can't believe I chose this planet.
Yeah, I say that every day.
What? Wow. Yeah. So thank you so much, Tamara Hill, for all this great knowledge and information. Now, please tell our listeners how they can reach you, how they can contact you, where they can find your information, and what they should be contacting you about.
Oh, sure. Well, firstly, thank you so much, Louise, for opening the opportunity for inviting me on your show. I'm very humbled and honored. I have various ways that you can contact me. You can find me on Twitter at Therapist T, and that's just Therapist, T-E-E. And you can also find me on Pinterest under Therapist T. I talk about all things relating to life and faith and hope. And I have an email where you can contact me if you have questions about your loved one regarding mental health services. I have tips on how to get mental health services for free, and various ways to help you. So you can contact me at caregiversandfamily@gmail.com. And if you email me, I'll give you my website and all the other tools that you might need.
Wow. Thank you so much. I think people really have found out what's the situation. So give me a few tips that I should start observing people around me, or that I should start observing myself to see how mentally sane I am or that the people around me are. Like, what should I be looking out for? Like, is there a few things that you can, like, say, like a top 3 or a top 5 or little clues?
Yeah, I should have slept on this question. This is a tough one, and here's why. Because human behavior is so unpredictable. We can never predict it. But I think 3 of the things that I look for, and you can do this too, I look for a restless spirit. Is this individual unable to follow the rules of society? Is this individual doing everything contrary to what our society wants them to do? If it is a yes, you might want to look a little bit deeper. The second thing is to keep an eye out for the possibility of mental health problems if this is an individual over the age of 5. Like I said, behavioral mental health problems can emerge at any age, so you want to keep an eye out. I think I would just encourage you to just be watchful, be vigilant. I think internally we all have a clue, we all have a sense when something's not right in a certain person. If you feel threatened, that's a cue. But, it's difficult, again, Louise, because human behavior is so unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
So unpredictable, yeah.
What about those people who are too nice? Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting question. I don't know what to say about that one.
Okay.
I don't know. Use your intuition. Yeah.
All right, Ms. Tamara Hill, thank you so much for being with us, and we will let you go. Thank you for being on the show, and we will definitely keep in touch and keep looking into the subject. Is there a last thing that you wanted to say before you leave?
Well, Again, thank you very much for having me on the show. I do want to say this, that we need to learn to look beyond what men of color have done in the criminal justice system and kind of look forward to what they are capable of doing. I believe in second chances where second chances should be given. So some people are genuinely sorry for what they do. They just need us to show them mercy. So let's find ways to change the system, help them out of the system, and give them courage.
All right. Thank you very much. So have a great evening, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. You too, Louise.
All right. Well. Thank you, my international people, for being with us. That was Tamara Hill from the United States of America. That was some crazy topic. Whoa. So if you're touched and you have a real solution, we encourage you to practice it. One of the important things that I retained that she said is that people need mentors. People need good examples in their society. So if you can help out someone who has been attacked by the system as it is, please do so and get in touch with us. We thank you for being with us, our listeners. Our last episode for all summer. We will stay in touch with you through videos every week. Thank you. Have a great evening, everyone. Louise Wachu, live from Vancouver, May 16, 2013. Murakoze muramuke murakarama.